The restaurant was called La Esperanza, a small family-owned establishment in Madrid's Malasaña district, where Ronaldo had been eating quietly for nearly a decade, always requesting the same corner table where he could enjoy traditional Spanish food without the attention that followed him to more fashionable establishments. And during all those years of regular visits, he had been served by the same waitress, a woman in her 50s whose name was Carmen, and whose professional demeanor had always impressed him with its combination of efficiency, warmth, and the kind of discretion that allowed him to eat in peace, while she ensured that his privacy was protected from other diners who might have recognized him, but respected the unspoken agreement that La Esperanza was a place where celebrities could be treated as normal customers rather than objects of curiosity or opportunities for photographs. Carmen had been working at La Esperanza for 10 years when Ronaldo first became a regular customer. And over the course of their weekly interactions, he had noticed small details about her that suggested a person of intelligence and culture whose circumstances had channeled her abilities into service work that paid the bills, but didn't challenge her mind or utilize her obvious talents for languages, literature, and the kind of sophisticated conversation that emerged during their brief exchanges about food, current events, and the changing character of the neighborhood that had been gentrified around them, while La Esperanza remained an island of authenticity in an area increasingly dominated by trendy restaurants and boutique shops that catered to tourists rather than local residents. The discovery of Carmen's secret came by accident on a Thursday evening in November when Ronaldo arrived earlier than usual and found the restaurant less busy than normal, giving him an opportunity to observe Carmen during a quiet moment when she thought no one was watching. And he saw her sitting at the bar, reading a thick academic book in what appeared to be Portuguese, taking careful notes in a notebook that was filled with dense handwriting and complex diagrams that suggested serious scholarly work rather than casual reading. And when she noticed his curiosity and quickly closed the book with obvious embarrassment, he realized that there was much more to her story than he had ever imagined during their years of polite but limited interaction. The conversation that followed, initiated by Ronaldo's gentle questions about her reading material, revealed that Carmen was in the final year of a doctoral program in comparative literature that she had been pursuing part-time for 8 years while working full-time at the restaurant to support herself and her elderly mother. A combination of responsibilities that had stretched what should have been a 4-year degree into nearly a decade of studying late at night after long shifts, writing her dissertation during breaks between serving customers, and conducting research at the university library on her days off, when most people her age were relaxing with family or pursuing hobbies that didn't require the intense intellectual effort that doctoral work demanded from someone who was already exhausted from physical labor and emotional stress of managing multiple responsibilities simultaneously. Carmen's dissertation was a comparative analysis of Latin American and Iberian poetry that examined how colonial histories influenced modern literary expression, a project that required fluency in Spanish, Portuguese, and Catalan, as well as extensive research into historical archives and contemporary literary theory. And as she described her work with obvious passion and expertise, Ronaldo began to understand that he had been served for years by someone whose intellectual achievements far exceeded those of most university professors, but whose economic circumstances had forced her to compartmentalize her scholarly identity while presenting herself as simply a waitress whose purpose was to provide efficient service without calling attention to her educational background or professional aspirations. The financial challenges that Carmen faced were complex and overwhelming, involving not just the costs of her doctoral program, but the medical expenses for her mother's chronic health conditions that required treatments not fully covered by Spain's public healthcare system, and the practical difficulties of maintaining employment that provided steady income while pursuing academic work that demanded flexibility for research trips, conference presentations, and the extended periods of uninterrupted writing time that dissertation completion required. but that were impossible to achieve when working in a restaurant where her shifts could not be easily rescheduled around academic deadlines or research opportunities that might advance her scholarly career. Carmen's academic advisor had repeatedly urged her to consider full-time study that would allow her to complete her dissertation more quickly and begin applying for university positions that matched her qualifications. But such advice assumed financial resources that she simply didn't possess, family support systems that didn't exist in her case, and the kind of economic privilege that allowed other doctoral students to focus entirely on their studies without worrying about immediate survival needs that took precedence over long-term career development when choosing between paying rent and buying research materials meant choosing survival over intellectual advancement. The shame that Carmen felt about her circumstances was evident in the way she apologized for taking so long to complete her degree, as if the delay reflected personal failure rather than the structural barriers that prevented working-class students from completing advanced degrees at the same pace as their more privileged peers, who could afford to treat education as their only responsibility, rather than one commitment among many that competed for time, energy, and financial resources that were never adequate to meet all the demands that life placed on people who lacked family wealth or institutional support systems that made academic success more achievable. Ronaldo's decision to help Carmen was immediate and comprehensive, involving not just financial support that would allow her to reduce her working hours and focus on completing her dissertation, but connections to academic networks that could provide mentorship and career guidance that she had been missing due to her isolation from the university community that most doctoral students took for granted, and practical assistance with her mother's medical care that would eliminate one source of stress and financial pressure that had been preventing her from making progress on her scholarly work that deserved to be completed and shared with academic communities that would benefit from her insights and expertise. The scholarship program that Ronaldo established was inspired by Carmen's situation, but designed to address the broader problem of talented students whose academic potential was being wasted due to economic circumstances that forced them to choose between intellectual development and economic survival. And the program provided not just tuition assistance, but comprehensive support, including living expenses, healthcare coverage, childcare or elder care assistance, and flexible funding that recognized that working-class students faced obstacles that middle-class students rarely encountered, and that traditional financial aid programs were not designed to address adequately. Carmen's transformation from overworked waitress to full-time doctoral candidate was gradual but dramatic, her productivity increasing exponentially once she could dedicate proper time and energy to her research. And her dissertation defense 18 months later was attended by Ronaldo, who listened with pride and amazement as she presented work that would have been impossible to complete without the support that had allowed her to develop her full potential, rather than constantly compromising her intellectual goals in service of immediate economic necessities that had previously consumed most of her time and energy. The academic position that Carmen obtained after completing her degree was at a prestigious university in Barcelona, where she became a professor of comparative literature whose research on colonial influences in contemporary poetry gained international recognition, and whose teaching style, influenced by her years of service work and interaction with people from diverse backgrounds, brought unique perspectives to academic discussions that had previously been dominated by scholars whose life experiences were much more narrow and privileged than hers had been. The mentorship program that grew out of Carmen's story connected working-class doctoral students with established academics who could provide guidance and support that went beyond what formal advisors typically offered, including practical advice about navigating academic institutions, emotional support during the isolation and self-doubt that characterized doctoral work, and professional networks that could open doors to opportunities that were often distributed through informal connections rather than formal application processes that disadvantaged students who lacked access to insider knowledge about how academic careers actually developed. The research institute that Carmen eventually established focused on working-class intellectual traditions and the ways that economic inequality affected scholarly production. And her work documented how many potential academic contributions were lost when brilliant people were prevented from pursuing advanced education due to financial constraints that had nothing to do with intellectual ability, but everything to do with family wealth and social privilege that determined who could afford to spend years in graduate school without earning significant income. Years later, when Carmen had become a recognized authority in her field and had mentored dozens of working-class students through doctoral programs, when the scholarship program had helped hundreds of people complete advanced degrees that would have been impossible without comprehensive support, when her research had influenced academic policies that made higher education more accessible to students from diverse economic backgrounds, Ronaldo would reflect that discovering Carmen's secret had taught him that extraordinary talent and intelligence were much more widely distributed than educational achievement suggested, and that many of the world's most important intellectual contributions were never made, not because the ideas didn't exist, but because the people who had them couldn't afford to develop and share them through formal academic channels that remained largely accessible only to people whose families could subsidize years of unpaid intellectual labor disguised as educational opportunity.